Hi. Time is the most valuable resource a player has, and yet it's the one games waste the most. Endless grinding, stretched out missions, content that exists just to fill space. It's all become the norm. But some games do things differently. No artificial padding, no feeling like you're being kept playing just for the numbers. This isn't a list of short games. This is a list of games that understand their pacing and end exactly when they should. Let's start with Black Mesa. This isn't just a visual upgrade, the game was rebuilt from the ground up. It keeps the spirit of the original Half-Life, but makes it far more dynamic and modern. The pacing constantly shifts. One moment you're exploring quiet labs, the next you're in intense firefights, and then the game throws in unexpected moments where genres start blending together. Because of that, it never gets boring. Something new is always happening. Yes, you can still feel some old-school level design here, and there are fewer enemies, but they're more dangerous. You can't relax. In the end, it's a perfect example of a game that respects your time. No filler, just a focused experience that keeps you engaged all the way through. Gears 5. This is pure, polished action that doesn't try to stretch itself with unnecessary content. The campaign is tightly designed. Every fight feels like a set piece, not just another wave of enemies. The game constantly puts pressure on you. Enemies are aggressive, cover breaks, and situations escalate fast. At the same time, there's more focus on the characters. The story isn't just there to justify the shooting, it actually gives you a reason to keep going. Resident Evil 7, Biohazard. This is a hard return to horror. No action overload, just tight spaces and constant tension. The Baker house feels like a character of its own. It's oppressive, unsettling, and never lets you relax. Resources are scarce, and every bullet matters. The game isn't trying to entertain you with non-stop shooting. Instead, it slows you down, makes you listen, look around, and stay alert. Sure, some people don't love the story or find the action lacking, but in terms of immersion, this is one of the strongest horror games out there. And in VR, it's on a completely different level. Assassin's Creed Mirage. This is a rare case where a big franchise takes a step back, and it works. There's no massive map packed with dozens of hours of content. Instead, you get a compact Baghdad, dense city design, and missions you can complete fairly quickly. The focus is back on stealth, observation, planning, and clean execution. You're not forced to grind levels, you just complete missions and move forward. The game doesn't try to hold you at all costs. It has a clear rhythm, a defined length, and a complete story. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. The combat here isn't about dying over and over, it's about understanding the mechanics. Once you get it, you win, and that saves both time and frustration. Exploration is handled well too. You're given freedom, but you're never forced to check every corner just to progress. If you want to explore, you can. If not, you move on with the story. Side activities are short, rewards feel meaningful, and you almost always feel like your time was well spent. It's a game that gives you freedom without abusing it. Call of Duty Modern Warfare. This reboot reimagines a classic series with familiar characters, same names, but different personalities, roles, and story direction. The campaign moves at a strong pace, never drags, and doesn't overload you with unnecessary systems. You just play through missions, and the story keeps pushing forward. Even years later, it still feels technically solid. Great visuals, stable performance, and some of the best gunplay in arcade shooters. Weapons sound right, feel right, and are animated so well that it's hard to go back to older entries. And it's one of the cleanest Call of Duty experiences in recent years. Smooth movement, active multiplayer, and crossplay that keeps matchmaking fast even now. It's one of those games that gives you exactly what you came for, nothing more, nothing less. Dishonored. is all about freedom without unnecessary friction. You're given a goal, you're given the tools, and then the game just steps aside. Each mission is a compact sandbox where you can approach things however you want: stealth, aggression, chaos, or a perfect clean run. And most importantly, the game never argues with your playstyle. It doesn't tell you you're playing wrong, it simply reacts to your decisions. There's no feeling of wasted time here. Even when you go off the main path, you almost always find something useful: a new route, a world detail, or a better position for your next move. Silent Hill 2 is a perfect example of a focused, story-driven experience that doesn't waste your time. The game moves at a steady pace. Exploration, puzzles, and tension are all carefully balanced, with no unnecessary distractions. Every location feels meaningful, and nothing is there just to fill space. Combat is simple and intentional, keeping the focus on atmosphere and psychological horror rather than constant action. The game doesn't rush you, but it also never drags. It always feels like you're moving forward. It's a compact, immersive journey that knows exactly what it wants to be and ends right when it should. Detroit: Become Human. This is an interactive movie you can finish over a couple of evenings, driven by presentation and atmosphere. The future setting feels believable, the visuals still look great, facial animations are sometimes better than in films, and the music does a lot to build tension. The gameplay is very simple: you walk, you make choices. But it's not about mechanics, it's about decisions. The game doesn't test your skill as much as it makes you think, and then live with the consequences. And those choices actually matter. Sometimes you see the results immediately, and sometimes they come back much later. Marvel's Spider-Man. This is a rare case where a superhero story works not just because of the action, but because of the character. Peter Parker feels real. He has problems, makes mistakes, and balances his personal life with being Spider-Man. The gameplay is what really hooks you. Traversal through New York is so well done that it becomes fun on its own. You're not just moving, you're enjoying the process. Combat is varied too, letting you mix gadgets and approach fights in different ways without it getting repetitive. Even side activities don't feel like chores. You can do them whenever you want without breaking the flow. Hollow Knight: Silksong is one of the most anticipated indie games for a reason, and based on everything we've seen so far, it looks like it follows the same philosophy as the original: tight design with no wasted time. The game is built around fast, precise movement and combat. You're constantly exploring, fighting, and adapting, with almost no filler between key moments. Every area feels purposeful, and progression comes from skill and understanding, not grinding. If it delivers on that promise, Silksong will be another great example of a game that respects your time, focused, challenging, and always moving forward. Wolfenstein: The New Order. This is a shooter that immediately understands what you're here for. No long introductions, no slow moments. The game quickly gets you into the action and keeps pushing forward. Missions flow one after another, mixing combat and story seamlessly. Yes, the levels are linear, but there's usually still a choice in how you approach them: stealth, aggression, or finding alternate paths. The story is also handled well. It never slows the game down, but still feels meaningful. Everything is delivered in the right amount. Max Payne 3. This is a tightly focused action game with no extra weight. Gunfights are short, intense, and demand attention. Bullet time isn't just a visual effect, it's a core survival tool. You're constantly balancing aggression and caution, and the game never lets you relax. Yes, it's linear, but that's exactly why it works. The story moves forward cleanly, with no detours or unnecessary pauses. Every scene connects naturally to the next, making the whole experience feel like one continuous journey. This isn't about freedom, it's about control over pacing. And the game uses that perfectly without wasting your time. Returnal. is one of the few roguelikes where even failed runs feel meaningful. The game throws you straight into the action. No long build-up, you learn as you play. And because everything feels so responsive, you start making decisions faster and understanding the system more naturally. Death here isn't a setback, it's part of the progression. You learn enemy patterns, the rhythm of combat, and improve with every run. And most importantly, it never turns into a grind. Progress comes from understanding, not from hours of farming. That's why even at high difficulty, it feels fair. It tests your skill, not your patience. Plague Tale: Innocence is a story that doesn't overload you with mechanics. Stealth, simple puzzles, and occasional combat are balanced in a way that keeps you moving forward without getting tired. The game never stalls or forces repetition. The levels are linear but varied, and every new situation introduces something clear and easy to understand without over-explaining. The story unfolds steadily and confidently. Characters are developed through events, not long dialogues. This is a game that knows exactly how long it should be and never goes beyond that. Quantum Break sets its pace immediately and keeps it all the way through. Combat is built around time-based abilities that feel intuitive. You quickly start combining them and gain real control over situations instead of just pressing buttons. The game constantly shifts its rhythm, action, story, back to action, so it never feels repetitive. The episodic structure works really well. Each act feels complete, and the live-action segments expand the story instead of replacing gameplay. It's a linear experience that doesn't try to be bigger than it needs to be, and that's exactly why it doesn't wear you out. The Evil Within 2 moves toward more open areas, but never loses control of its pacing. You have freedom, you can explore, choose your route, search for resources, but the game never forces you to stay longer than necessary. Every trip out matters. You find useful items, unlock new options, and genuinely improve your chances of survival. The second game feels much more comfortable than the first. The story flows better, and the horror comes not just from jump scares, but from constant pressure and atmosphere. It's a great example of giving players freedom without turning it into a chore. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. This is a compact adventure that never feels cut down. The game gets you into the action quickly, skips long setups, and gives you exactly what you're here for: exploration, combat, and puzzles. Even the more open area doesn't turn into a checklist. It adds variety without breaking the pacing. The story moves forward confidently, characters are developed through action, and every chapter feels important. And most importantly, it ends exactly when it should. A complete, rich, and satisfying experience that doesn't leave you feeling drained. Alan Wake 2 is a rare example of a story-driven horror game that doesn't drag things out, but instead keeps a tight pace from start to finish. The story is told from two perspectives, writer Alan and an FBI agent, and that constant switching keeps the momentum going, with no empty chapters or slow sections. Gameplay is built around survival and atmosphere, limited resources, thoughtful combat, and exploration that almost always feels worthwhile. At the same time, nothing feels bloated. Every system supports immersion instead of stretching playtime. Even investigative elements like the mind place add depth without slowing things down. The campaign runs around 20 hours with no grind, and you stay engaged the entire time. It's one of those games where you don't want to step away for a second. Guardians of the Galaxy is a story-driven adventure that knows exactly what it wants to be. No open world, no grind, just story, characters, and constant forward momentum. You play as Star-Lord, lead your team, and make decisions that affect dialogue and relationships within the group. And that interaction between characters is what really makes the game stand out. They're constantly talking, arguing, joking, and it keeps the journey from ever feeling empty. The gameplay is simple but solid. Combat is dynamic, the story flows without interruptions, and levels aren't filled with unnecessary activities. In the end, it's a very clean experience. You just play through it from start to finish without distractions or fatigue. All of these games don't try to keep you playing at any cost. They don't stretch things out, they don't distract, and they don't overload you. They respect your time, and you feel that from the very first minutes. The Image Game Channel was with you. Have a nice day.